Okay, so we continue to Phase 2, Chapter 3. We're on page 8 still. Okay, so we're going to continue on to talk about land registry and title registration. Now, there's two registry systems that exist in Ontario. One is the Registry Act, which I refer to as the older system, and the Land Titles Act, which I refer to as the newer system. Now, essentially, Registry Act, of course, started in 1795. There is something that is called the chain of titles in that. That is on the exam. That is referring to where you can do an abstract search from the books of titles going backwards of 40 years and beyond. So you can go 40 years and then beyond that. And that was called a chain of titles. Okay, and it's indexed by number. All right. So that's something that may appear in the exam. That has come up quite a few times in the past as well. Now, there's something called the Polaris System. This is the system that is mapping and also provides property detailed database information from the Ontario government. Now, there's a company called Terranet. They're responsible for implementation of the system. The operation and enhancements of Polaris is all done by Terranet. Coincidentally, the records that have been gradually converted to land titles, they're under a project called Land Titles Conversion Project. So what's happening here is it's telling you clearly that the registry system or Registry Act was the older one. You'll see it disappear eventually, and things are all switching over slowly to Land Titles Act. Okay? So hopefully this is going to be completed soon because it's going to be exciting for information to be more readily available. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at Land Titles Act. It was an act that was passed in 1885, so close to early 1900s. There's three things that you need to remember and study from your book to know these three definitions, which is mirror principle, current principle, and insurance principle. So these three, current principle, I believe, is the one that's been asked the most on the last 8-9 exams. The students have written exams from April to May 2014. So what happens here is the government basically is prepared to guarantee that there's no interests other than that are set out in the registrar or the register that can affect the land. So if there's nothing there that's there previously, nothing else will come up later. Okay. Also, when you read this area, it describes the differences between the Land Titles Act in conjunction to after you look at the chain of titles for the past years. When you pass the second paragraph and come to the third, there's something that is described as the Land Titles Assurance Fund that's established under Part 5 of the Land Titles Act. This is an insurance part of the title described as above, and don't mix it up with title insurance, which is totally different. Title insurance is purchased right now by everybody out there who buys a home. Title insurance is basically for you to prevent any fraud against your title. So even if you're not sure of the survey or you're not sure of something, you don't have to worry about it. You can buy title insurance and it covers all those angles. Okay. Also, you'll see that all land that's subdivided by a registered plan of subdivision up here in the second paragraph back again on condominiums is developed under the Condominium Act and registered under the Land Titles Act. So as you can see, these days we're developing a lot more condominiums than before. So the transition of the registration of the subdivision of these things is all falling under the Land Titles Act. Okay, so it's in your second paragraph. Now in the exam, there's something that came up here, which was, it says that it was under tract indexing system using a geographic location. That was up there, and also it said that the land titles entries were by the way of assigned parcel numbers. That was another question that came up. Separate parcel record is kept in a register for title for each unit of ownership. That's just for your knowledge. And the government is prepared to guarantee the title of the property, and no other interests that are on the property are expressed by them. Okay. Prior interests are ended and deleted. So when somebody takes over, it's totally theirs. There's not going to be any connection. And of course, that is again referring to chain of titles for the past years. Okay, so now let's move over to automated records and e-registration. Okay, so this is the Land Registration Reform Act, LRRA, came into effect in 1985. There is a question on the exam that refers to the second sentence about an assigned PIN number. That's a property identification number. It asks you what's in there, and the last line gives you the answer, which says it's a combination of a block number and a PIN number. Okay? And this paragraph also says properties are converted to land titles and automated underneath the Polaris system. So all of that is working together as the transition is happening between the system of Land Titles Act and Polaris. The registration of documents is follows a 5-step process basically. So I'll explain this to you when we go to the land registry office and we want to take a property into our names and we want to purchase a property. The first thing you're going to do, similarly to a car, you're going to transfer the ownership. Okay, so in the first step we're going to transfer the deed of the land. So the deed is going to first get transferred to your name. So you're buying a property, you get the deed transferred over. Let's say you're getting a car loan, and in this case, of course, it's like a mortgage. You're getting a mortgage for a home. So as you bought the car, you got a car loan. So first you'd have to transfer the ownership of the car to yourself. And in this case of a house, you're transferring the deed to your name, or the lawyer's doing it for you, and then you're having a mortgage attached to it, which is number 2, the second form that follows the first one. Third, you have a discharge of mortgage. So if somebody else was owning the home before you and they've got a mortgage on that property, that lawyer now is going to discharge that mortgage. Okay. Your fourth document that may be attached might be a power of attorney, a lien. So if you owe money to a contractor, a roofer, renovator, that's going to come up. Power of attorney is going to come up if that person has the rights to do this transaction for you or on your behalf. So that's number 4. Or even survivorship, if someone's passed away and someone is left in that marriage or that scenario of survivorship, and that will get passed on to that person. 5 will be a schedule. So if you have anything to attach in number 5, if there's any schedules of anything additional beyond these things, you'll attach it as the 5th form number 5. So again, e-registration, this is an exam question here as well. There's 2 forms of e-registration in the database in Ontario. There's Polaris and Terranet. So remember that Terranet is the one that is implementing and managing Polaris. So you understand that part, because that part does come up. There's a wonderful diagram here which shows you the e-registration document flow of how it falls into place. It shows you the documents of the deed are prepared in step 1. Then there's messaging between the 2 lawyers that are trying to facilitate the transaction. The solicitors then confirm the documents by accepting electronic signatures in Part 3. Part 4 is a release where the documents are confirmed and everything is good, and then the keys and documents are released to each buyer and seller that's involved in that transaction. Okay, so let's talk about registration for miscellaneous issues. There's also registration for things that come up that are related to other items. The first one is the leasehold interest. You might have a lease that exceeds 3 years. A lot of commercial leases start at 3 years and more. You actually have to put that on the title. It must be registered underneath registry or the land title system. Okay, so if you have a longer than 3-year lease, you've got to put it on there. If you have a lease that was month to month, going on for 21 years or more, you've got to actually add that into the system as well. Okay? And this goes back to the long lease example I gave for McDonald's, Tim Hortons. Those kinds of companies will use long leases like 99 years. That's registered right on the title. Crown lands are lands that are owned by the Crown. It can fall under public land, and of course that's registered on that title of that land. Native lands are managed by the federal government. They decide who gets to have the way of sale or grant leases on land that's surrendered to native. Power of attorney. This is for dealing with a particular property for a specified time period, and it will give power of attorney on the behalf of someone else to act on their behalf for a purpose of time. Okay. If it's an estate of a deceased person, it could be administered by a trustee, which could be a lawyer or another family member. That's known as the executor. So there could be also an estate trustee, which they also call as an executor as well. In this case, the person will be acting on their behalf. The lawyers must address these kinds of issues when they come up because it's of a person that's already deceased. So it's sometimes complicated, sometimes not. It just depends on the circumstances of which person has the authority to take control of the deceased property. Okay, that wraps up us on page 10, and that completes our review of chapter 3.